Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 4th, 2021, the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous materials.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the Republican New York delegation, I rise today in recognition to honor our good friend Mike Long, the longtime chairman of the Conservative Party of New York. Mike passed away this week with his beloved family at his side, leaving behind an extraordinary life and legacy. Mike Long was a man of integrity who lived a life of service above self. He was among the most, if not the most, respected and esteemed political leaders in New York politics by both his allies and his political opponents. Mike Long was proudly born in Brooklyn, New York, and was raised in southern Queens. In 1959, Mike enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. He felt strongly that his duty was to our country, and as we know, and this was Mike, once a Marine, always a Marine. Mike then served in elected office on the New York City Council and then for decades as chair of the New York Conservative Party, where he got to know nearly every state and federal Republican and conservative candidate for public office. His chairmanship continued for more than 30 years, which is a testament to his character, his work ethic, his leadership, and his determination to make a difference. In recognition of his strong defense of the rights of the unborn, Pope St. John Paul II named him a Knight of St. Gregory, one of the highest honors for a Catholic layman. Mike was a champion for hardworking New Yorkers and a lifelong advocate for smaller government, lower taxes, and improving the lives of hardworking New York families. I and my colleagues, we were all honored to call Mike a true friend. When I first ran for office, I had met Chairman Long at various Conservative Party events, but I set up a formal meeting to seek his advice. It was in his office in Brooklyn. That's a long way for an upstate New York native running in the North Country. And I'll be honest, I got lost in the city driving and was hours late for that meeting. It's a pet peeve of mine to be late, and certainly you never want to be late for a Marine. It's a matter of respect to be on time. Mike couldn't have been more gracious, I will never forget it, saying I will probably win my campaign because I know how to drive in upstate New York, but clearly not in New York City. I was proud to earn his support and that of the Conservative Party. My family was honored to have Mike and his wife Eileen at our wedding years later. He is a true lifelong friend. Now, Mike is in heaven among the angels, and our hearts are broken for this truly irreplaceable loss. As I honor him for his service and an extraordinary life well lived today, we join together in praying for his beloved family, thousands and thousands of friends, and vast community of admirers. And I'm so honored to have my colleagues here today. I want to yield as much time as he may consume my colleague, Mr. Katko from Central New York.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of Michael Long, who passed away on July 24, 2022. Mike was a beloved member of the New York Conservative Party, a mentor to many, including myself, a dear friend, and a champion for New Yorkers. A Brooklyn native, Mike developed a love for his home state and his country at a young age. Mike's sense of public duty led him to serve this country in the United States Marine Corps. Following that service, he began his decades-long career in politics, and in 1981 he was elected to serve as a Brooklyn at-large representative in the New York City Council. In 1988, Mike became the chair of the New York Conservative Party, a post that he retained until 2019. It was in this capacity that I got to know Mike and got to know Mike well. And the overriding thing I got from Mike was his sense of fairness, his sense of decency, his commitment to the cause, and endeavoring to make sure that the Conservative Party had a big tent, not a small, restrictive one. The Conservative Party and all New York Republicans will miss Mike's guidance and his integrity. Outside of politics, Mike was a devoted husband and father to his wife Eileen and their 9 children. Madam Speaker, I ask that my colleagues in the House join me in honoring the life and legacy of Michael Long. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
I now yield to our colleague Lee Zeldin from Long Island, who is proudly the Republican and the Conservative Party nominee for Governor of New York State. As much time as he may consume.
Thank you to my colleague for her leadership and all of my New York colleagues for being here today. And Mike Long was such a special, principled, faithful patriot. He loved his family. He loved his country. He was willing to lay down his life for it at any time, valuing our Constitution, our freedom. Our state is better off because Mike Long lived this legendary life of service. Jerry Kassar, the new New York State Conservative Party chair, has these really big shoes to try to fill, and for all of us collectively, trying to figure out how to fill these shoes will be a challenge for all of us, but we accept that challenge with Mike's spirit and fight, his inspiration always living within each and every one of us. He is just such a rock solid to his core, genuine, great American. And to his entire family, obviously his wife of nearly 60 years, Eileen, but they also have 9 children, 24 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren, and everybody who knew and loved Mike Long are mourning the passing of a truly great public servant. Rest in peace, Mike Long. Thank you for your friendship, your guidance, your service. And now it's left to the rest of us to carry on what was a legendary, inspirational contribution to the greatest country in the history of the world because of great Marines and patriots like you. Rest in peace.
Thank you to Mr. Zeldin. I now yield to our colleague from Western New York, Mr. Jacobs, as much time as he may consume.
Thank you. I rise today to honor the life and legacy of Mike Long, one of our state's greatest political leaders. Mr. Long served as chairman of the State Conservative Party for 3 decades. An article in the New York Post that was recently written called Mike a working class champion, and that he was. From the beginning of his career in politics, he believed conservatives and Republicans must focus on what matters for working class Americans. Mike's beliefs were as correct today as they were nearly 60 years ago when he began his career in public service. I remember speaking with Mike for the first time when I was going to run for a special election for the New York State Senate decades ago now. At that time, Mike's son, we were talking about his family, and at that time, Mike's son had just been in a near-fatal accident, run over by a New York City bus while he was riding a bicycle. His son, Matt, broke numerous bones and had countless surgeries as a result. But like his father, he had incredible grit and determination, and he not only recovered but continued to compete in triathlons and Ironmans. Mike lived out his conservative principles. He was married to his wife, Eileen, for 59 years and had 9 children, as was mentioned, countless numbers of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Our state and nation are a better place due to Mike Long's service and commitment to his principles. May he rest in peace. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you to Mr. Jacobs. I now, and this is fitting because my colleague from Staten Island, she represents Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn, was the longtime representative at the state level and in Congress for Mike and Eileen Long. So I yield as much time as she may consume to Ms. Malliotakis.
Thank you to my colleague, and thank you to everyone who spoke before me for recognizing the great achievements of a great man. Mike Long was somebody who I was proud to represent as a state assembly member and then in Congress. He is somebody who truly believed in faith and freedom, in the American dream, and family. As was mentioned, he had an amazing, beautiful family who I'm also very proud to serve as many of their representatives. And they are so dedicated to our community of Brooklyn, to our city of New York, to our state, and to our nation. All of the children contribute in one way or another to the community that we are so proud to call home. But Mike served and led by example for his family. He was not just a Marine who served for our country, willing to die for our country. He was then a member of the City Council of New York. He was a small business owner. And then he was also the chairman of the Conservative Party, which made such an impression and was so influential in our city and state politics for decades and still continues to be because of the leadership of Mike Long. You know, when I first ran for the Assembly, I was so proud to have the banner of the Conservative Party and to have the support of somebody like Mike Long, who had so much integrity and was so passionate about what we believed in, that our country needs to be preserved, that we must preserve our freedoms, our liberties. We must make sure we respect the taxpayer, that we make it easier for small businesses, and we support individual freedoms and liberties. And in fact, it was the Conservative Party that was the margin of victory in my very first race. And so I owe a lot of my success to Michael Long and his initial support of me. So thank you, Mike Long, for all you've done for our community, for the delegation, for our city, and for our country. You will be missed, and I give my sincere condolences to his wife, Eileen, their 9 children, their 25 grandchildren, and their 4 great-grandchildren. That just shows you how truly dedicated he was to his family, and it just is a beautiful family. So thank you, and God bless.
As you heard from all the New York Republican members of Congress, Mike's influence cannot be overemphasized, and he has touched tens of thousands of lives over his decades of service and really his lifetime of service. As many of our members talked about, Mike Long was a man of principle. He was a man of faith, of freedom, of family, and he was a proud American. With that, I yield back to the chair.